Welcome in. It is Pro Football Today right here on SportsGrid. Kevin Walsh, Donnie Rightside, and Joe Lisi on what promises to be a very busy Sunday because, Lisi, we will not only hit a very interesting NFL slate, we will get the final college football playoff rankings.
Oh, can't wait for that. We saw great games play out in terms of Championship Saturday. We'll see what the top 12 teams are in about 2 hours. We'll cut into that from an in-game perspective. But we have great games in terms of week number 14. Started on Thursday night. Green Bay and the Lions going right down to the wire. 3-point game. We have L.A. and Kansas City squaring off in an AFC West battle, Pittsburgh and Cleveland. I mean, and the big one in terms of 4 o'clock, the Bills and the Rams. What plays out, Donnie, in terms of that matchup? Fantastic week number 14.
Yeah, it's one of those slates where there's not a lot of intriguing games, as you might say, like game of the year type situations, but some great handicapping spots. But also, more importantly, to these guys' point, college football sort of melds with pro football today. Last year, guys, we were in Atlantic City, and we got a lightning bolt, which was Florida State. It was left out of the playoffs to cheers, at least from me, on the desk. We'll see if we get some of that today. But the fun part about that, too, is we'll see the playoff matchups along with it. Yeah. So we'll get those first glimpses along with everybody. It's great.
And it, once again, is Bama on that cut line there. So you have some of that similar intrigue. There's another college, but it's college/NFL store we're going to get to in just a moment. But I do want to just kind of quickly run around today's games. And you mentioned, Donnie, not really any game of the years, except for one bettor out there who has the game of the life, evidently, today on a 13.5-point favorite, just winning the game.
Love it.
There was reports, and you know how these kind of things get picked up. Was the biggest bet ever, the biggest bet of the season. $3 million placed on Eagles money line. It looks like today, Donnie, we won't be the biggest Eagles fans in the world.
Exactly. I believe it was placed out of Kentucky. I want to say maybe with Circa at that point, but I think the biggest bet, at least in the state of Kentucky at that point. But that is amazing where you have that type of scratch to lay down just over $3 million to win roughly $500,000 left. But that's showing, like, you know what? I got conviction on this game. I don't care what that final score is as long as the Eagles win by 1 point or more.
Yeah, it could have been Drake. Who knows? You never know. In terms of Mayweather, Drake, you know, the money, obviously, on the money line bet. I don't put a lot of weight into that. I understand it moves lines. Yeah, right? Alt it up. Alt it up. 17.5, you know, blowout special. But it does affect line movement. It does affect, you know, perception in terms of how people and gamblers want to play this game. It looks like a sure thing. You're talking about a team in terms of Philadelphia that has won 8 straight heading into this matchup. Clearly one of the best teams in the NFL, potentially the best team in the NFC. We'll see how it plays out a little bit later. But if they do lose today, wow, that'll disrupt everything.
It certainly would, yeah.
No, I was going to say quickly on like the handicapping aspect of it, because they talked to the owner of the casino. It's basically like, look, it's on sale today. Anybody out there want the Panthers, you're getting like $1.50 off just by getting that money line. So if you feel that upset is in the making and it's all about that quote-unquote value, there are books that are way different than the other ones due to taking a $3 million wager on one side.
I actually imagine that they're probably one of the more, in terms of ticket count, bet on Moneyline dogs, just because $10 down. Oh, I went over $50. Like I imagine there's a number of tickets out there.
Yeah, not a lot of money line tickets on the Eagles today at that price, except if you're going big or going
that guy has the one money line ticket potentially there. We do have a big game, I think, with Sunday Night Football between the Chiefs and the Chargers. And again, it's a unique line. Since the Chiefs bye week, they've played, I believe it is 7 games. 5 of them booked as over a touchdown favorite. The other 2, they were actually booked as an underdog. Today, a 3.5-point favorite, a very modest line with a division rival showing up to town, Lisi.
It is, and when you look at Kansas City right now, I mean, you know, they win games, but they win them close, right? And that's the biggest thing is that they've won 6 home games this year by an average margin of right around like 5 points per game. So their biggest blowout came, I believe, the Monday night when they played the New Orleans Saints. They won that game as a 5.5-point favorite by 13 points. That's the largest margin at home for the Kansas City Chiefs. We have a Chargers defense, back-to-back road games, forced turnovers last week against Kirk Cousins. The pick 6 really changed the complexity of that matchup, and they're playing and trending just what you want to see at the end of the regular season, right? They're peaking at just the right time. Justin Herbert only 147 yards, but I think this game will be a very blue-collar game. We'll see how it plays out. Early on, I'll take the points with the Chargers.
You know, it's funny. You look at these two teams last year, Joe, or the year before, you said, boy, let's really get after it in the air. Unbelievable wide receivers, running games, quarterbacks, you have it. Now it looks like more of a defensive game to me. You see that 45.5 is the opening number, has dropped down to 42.5, 43s at most outlets. The one thing, Joe, I like about the Chargers, I love their head coach and I love their defense. But their offense is coming in handicapped into this game. Ladd McConkey probably going to be a game-time decision if he plays at all, and how effective will he be? So are we leaning on Quentin Johnson? That hasn't really worked out the past couple weeks. So, Joe, for me, I don't like laying over 3.5 with Kansas City. I'll do that today.
Yeah, I'm curious about the total, though, right? 42.5, 43. So
we'll get.
I'm just saying, it is intriguing.
We're ramped up.
We'll get into it. It's a good.
We got to
game.
hurry up. It's college football today. We got to hurry up.
You know what, then, Donnie? How about I give you this? Because it's something.
Oh no!
What do you mean?
I sense a little condensation.
No. Don't worry, it's something right up your alley.
He's touchy. He's touchy.
Yeah, he's all worried about that ACC tweet. It's an ACC topic, though, Donnie.
Okay, let's go. Let's shoot.
Bill Belichick to the college game to coach North Carolina. Lisi and I got to kind of spin about this a little bit yesterday. A story I imagine if you had it your way, full 3 hours on this one here.
I'm telling you right now, and I'm glad you brought because it never even crossed my mind since it came up because I really haven't been on a show to actually get after. So thank you for doing that. This is the most maniacal move I've ever seen in my life. One of the best coaches we've ever seen that says, you know what, I want to coach again. Didn't get a job in the NFL last year, and it's not as if he's going into like, you know what. Well, Ohio State would be really intriguing for me to go take over and have some fun. Or one of the, the true blue bloods there at the top of the mountain right now. But Bill Belichick saying, I want to go to UNC. But the best part about it is usually like a UNC, like, case closed. We don't even interview anybody else. You're like, he's not really what we're looking for, but it's nice he interviewed at this point. What is going on?
Yeah, I think I thought about this a lot, and Kevin and I got into it yesterday. But I said he's going out with a young girl, 24 years old. He's
undergrad free tuition.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Right. But the more you think about it, and you look at like the conference as a whole, right?
Yeah.
ACC.
Yep.
In his mind, he has the potential maybe to dominate, right? Just the way Clemson had for 8 or 9 years, right? They dominated the ACC. You go into the SEC, you go into the Big Ten, you have to go and recruit with the likes of Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon now. That's dominating the conference. I think now maybe he's looking at it as saying, I could come right in, and this is the AFC East all over again. I'll dominate for the next 4 or 5 seasons and hand the reins over to my son who will take over.
It doesn't say, by the way, like I would picture Bill Belichick before going to UNC. He'd be like, you know what, if Army or Navy was open, boy, I'd love to do that. His affinity for the Naval Academy and Army itself. Or just like coach high school football because I like to be a high school football coach. The North Carolina thing, Kevin, caught me so like out of whack. Like, where did it come from?
Well, I think that the three of us had an off-air debate conversation around Vrabel to Ohio State.
Right.
Yeah.
I do believe that if I'm a high-level coach, college is very interesting. I think the job security is much, much better. Like, we are all wondering, hey, Ryan Day going to get fired? There's a world he keeps that job. NFL-wise, he'd have been fired years ago, right? Is how it feels. So I wonder if for Belichick, Don, he's like, listen, I'm not going to go somewhere and get run out of town in 2 years. I can literally go to UNC and be there as long as I'd like. Right? No, yeah, right? Like, Don, like, it took Mac Brown forever to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing that's really interesting is the Steve Belichick angle of this. Mm-hmm. His son, who was with him in New England and was just spent this past year as a defensive coordinator. Now, I imagine there will be some who will look at that and go, so he's just going to do this to get Stephen Belichick a job. That's ridiculous. That's not how this should work. I'll give you maybe a hot take. If you're UNC and you tell me, hold on a minute, I get Bill Belichick and you're guaranteeing me Stephen Belichick after him, sign me up. Donnie's 37 years old, NFL experience, keeps the Belichick name there.
Hire his son then.
Well, Bill sets the stage, I think. Because, Donnie, I think Bill can do...
Like Lane and Monty Kiffin?
I think that Bill Belichick could do great work, actually, in terms of the portal and recruiting. Because nobody walks in with more cachet than Bill Belichick.
No, what about the X's and O's, though, too? Well, I think everybody's... That's what I'm saying.
I don't know. Bill Belichick with the NIL money. Now, look, Tom took less. You need to take less. I don't know if that plays with the kids today.
But I also think that people are like, oh, what's he going to do when kids leave? He's going to send them on their way.
I'm surprised that he didn't interview and get the job automatically. That's what's baffling. It's like, he's not even the front runner, but it was nice to have him in the building.
Yeah. Wow. This is certainly something we'll talk a little bit more about. We've got Chargers Chiefs on deck.
She was recruited to Oregon partially by, guess who? Mark Campbell and Xavi Lopez. They know what they're doing. And I'm going to say this right now, folks. I'm going to say this right now. Mark Campbell's one of the 5 to 10 best coaches in women's college basketball right now.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
We got the NBA Cup going on. Not that anybody really cares per se about the NBA Cup. Now, I got to be honest with you. I actually did try to look of like, okay, like what does it mean like for the NBA Cup? Like who's playing for what here? And I lost interest and I gave up after about 30 seconds. And I was like, you know what? Whatever, dude. There's NBA games.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
He also said that the Bears head coaching opening would be the most coveted job after the season.
They'll let that guy stay. I heard today that they were very worried about screwing up Caleb Williams, so that he likes this guy Brown so much that they may let him stay as the head coach. What a disaster that'll turn into.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Back to right here on Pro Football Today. The temptation is real to just, all right, let's get more into a little Bill Belichick here.
Yeah.
Who knows, though? Maybe, Bill Belichick will coach the Chiefs next year if Andy Reid wants to retire. I don't know. We can just throw crazy stuff out there.
He's supposed to be an Eagles head coach, but the Sirianni's going to get locked up now, so Bill Bell's like, you know what? No job for me.
You don't think Atlanta, though, is kicking themselves that they didn't go with Belichick maybe?
No.
You think he would have been right here with 6-6?
I don't look at them and coaching screams, oh, wow, I can't believe what Raheem Morris has done. I think the conversation right now, maybe it's too cookie cutter, but it's, oh, gosh, the Kirk Cousins thing's a mess in Atlanta. I don't think we're looking at the coach situation. And here, let me just say this quickly, because we have a lot of time to talk Chiefs-Chargers here, but it goes back to the Vrabel conversation the three of us had. Like, Don, if you're Bill Belichick, legitimately, would you rather be in full control of everything you could possibly imagine with North Carolina, set your son up for the succession plan, or go coach the Giants?
And there is merit to that because Bill Belichick was running the entire show for 25 years in New England. He goes to a new owner. Maybe they want to meddle in that. He can literally go to a college, which was why I think it's so interesting that Carolina's like, yeah, that was nice he was in here, as opposed to just saying, you want to, we don't need to hire, we'll hire you now. We don't need an interview at this point. But I think it's right where college football is now set up like the pro game. You have a salary cap with your NIL, like where you want to spend it, who you want to give it to. And you might want to say, like, he can't recruit in living rooms. But come on now, Bill Belichick is still a name that resonates and just goes, hey, Tom, pick up the phone here for this young five-star quarterback and tell him what you can do here at Carolina.
Yeah, 6 Super Bowls carries a huge amount in regards to the recruiting aspect. Not only that, and we talked about this yesterday, Bill O'Brien, his former staff, right? He's now coaching in the conference at Boston College, right? He talks daily with Nick Saban, who tells him about the current landscape. So he's definitely piped in regards to the college game and understands it. I just think when you look at the connection to North Carolina, right, which is typically looked at as a basketball school, and Mac Brown brought that school the biggest success that they have had early 90s, late 90s, and then he moved on to Texas. I just believe that Bill looks at that program. There's money there. It's warm weather. He could potentially, walk into the sunset, and it's a winnable conference, meaning it's not dominated by Ohio State and all of the others.
I'll throw this out here, and then we'll get to Chiefs-Chargers. He goes to UNC. Quinn Ewers would be better off going to North Carolina next year than entering the NFL draft, getting picked in the 4th, 5th round, and flopping around the league. And
development of players. We talk about that constantly.
Belichick will have the type of cachet to tell Quinn, come this way. I got you. Carson Beck, I'm telling you, he's got that type of swing. Let's talk Chiefs-Chargers, though, because you have what is, I think, for Kansas City. This is the type of game they're built on, in my opinion. A 3.5, 4-point favorite. Again, total right now 42.5. If the Kansas City Chiefs are, when I say legit Super Bowl contenders, I guess with Mahomes and Reed they will always be. But I mean contenders beyond reputation. At home, they step up, they handle business. This is a Chargers team that we've seen host Baltimore, not handle business. Against Cincinnati, end up escaping like that. This is a spot to me, Lisi, where I've seen the Chargers defense challenged. Pat Mahomes, this down year. That should not be the case in this game tonight. The Chiefs should step up and handle business. Do you think they will?
I think it'll be a tough game. I really do. And I've been really impressed with the L.A. Chargers. I think Jim Harbaugh has done a fantastic job in terms of year number one. I did believe that it would take 2 or 3 years for him to develop and get this team to this level. But he's done a great job in terms of coaching them up, right? They're blue collar. They run the football. They're now forcing turnovers. They're winning the games, the tight games, especially on the road, and they find ways to pull it out. Now, they didn't do that the other night on the Thursday night against Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. It is back-to-back road games. That is the one, I guess, concern for me going all in on the Chargers. But I think they match up well against Kansas City, Kev. We talked about it. They're 6-0 at home, but those wins are narrow, right? They're razor thin in terms of the spread, and you look at 5.1 yards won in terms of margin of victory. They're laying 3.5. Divisional game. I like Harbaugh in this spot. I don't know if they win it, but it wouldn't shock me if we land right on the number 23-20, Donnie.
Yeah, I'm leaning more towards the under in this game, too, because I look at 2 top 10 defenses and 2 offenses that are pretty much saying to themselves, hey, you know what? Let's not cost us the football game, hang around and try to steal it in the fourth quarter. You look at that 17-13 victory that you just had for the Chargers against Atlanta. They did nothing on offense, but they were smart enough to understand, Joe, I got a quarterback right now that's on the run and throwing multiple interceptions. Let's not do the same thing. And if you just look at the box score, I know it's not indicative of game to game to game, but you look at Herbert, 147 yards passing at last game. Ladd McConkey had 117. McConkey might not be there tonight, which means where are we running the football, Joe? Where are we passing the football? Is this a Disley game to try to come up? This is one of those few spots I look at Kansas City and say, I actually like them laying the points.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me. Again, it's Kansas City, right? They have dominated in just winning games straight up. Covering the spread is another aspect. But again, when you have a 3.5-point number, it's light enough that you say they should win this ball game by margin. If you believe that Pat Mahomes and Travis Kelce will step up. We saw Pacheco last week, 7 carries, 44 yards. The big takeaway for me on terms of the turnovers as well, Kev, for L.A., 3 of 11 in terms of Atlanta's third down conversions. They got off the field, the Chargers did, in terms of third down. They gave their quarterback and offense an opportunity at short fields in that matchup. They do that today, they're going to be within the number. The total, I lean to the over just because I could see this game starting out very tight and then opening up. 42.5 for a Chiefs game is a little bit light.
I like the over in this game. I do. I understand, listen, the world where this goes wrong. The Chargers offense last week struggled, but I think they are in line for a bit of a bounce-back spot in their own right. That is a team that actually had kind of consistently started to put up 24-plus points in every single game that they were playing before the letdown in Atlanta. That was a really high total in that game. That fell obviously well under the number there. I look back to when we saw these teams play earlier on in the season, and you think about who the Chargers were then. We thought that was like, okay, smash mouth, this is a college team, right? Well, what I've seen since is the Chargers are far more of an over team compared to that version, right? Herbert's doing a lot more, and the defense isn't as good. The total's only 1 point higher. The question then becomes, Donnie, can I trust Kansas City's offense to show up? And I think I can.
They will, and they'll show up in the moments that matter, which is what they typically do. So if I'm looking at, and I love doing this sometimes, if I want the Chargers, I'm just going to take Justin Herbert props there. If he doesn't hit them, they're not winning this football game, and keep an eye on his legs today.
Let's keep eyes on Mahomes props as well. We'll break that down next.
She was recruited to Oregon partially by, guess who? Mark Campbell and Xavi Lopez. They know what they're doing. And I'm going to say this right now, folks. I'm going to say this right now. Mark Campbell is one of the 5 to 10 best coaches in women's college basketball right now.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
We got the NBA Cup going on. Not that anybody really cares per se about the NBA Cup. Now, I got to be honest with you. I actually did try to look of like, okay, like what does it mean like for the NBA Cup? Like who's playing for what here? And I lost interest and I gave up after about 30 seconds. And I was like, you know what? Whatever, dude. There's NBA games.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
He also said that the Bears head coaching opening would be the most coveted job after the season.
They'll let that guy stay. I heard today that they were very worried about screwing up Caleb Williams, so that he likes this guy Brown so much that they may let him stay as the head coach. What a disaster that'll turn into.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Taking a look here at Chiefs-Chargers, I think it's the best game on this board. I think it has a lot of implications because this Kansas City line of just 3.5 certainly says the Chargers are live. And if you do get a Chargers victory, I don't think it's really going to put the division up for grabs. Still sitting right now at 4 losses. It's very unlikely that would be enough. It would push Buffalo with a win in their game, which we're going to get to next, to the number 1 seed. It means the pressure's on Mahomes. So, somebody who's playing the over today, obviously I think that Pat can step up here in this game. But, Lisi, I really think that if he is still capable of it, I don't think today should be a game where Pat steps up on the last drive of the game.
No.
On the drive before half.
Right.
Step up the whole – again, you're Pat Mahomes. Go out there, and I'll call it like you call. Throw for 350 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and look like the best player in the world for maybe the first time all season.
Yeah, you're right. He's coming off 306 in the win against Las Vegas, right? So he's starting to show glimpses of his former self. We saw DeAndre Hopkins, 4 receptions, 90 yards. Let's not forget, you brought up the first matchup. That was the game Rashee Rice went down with the knee injury, right? He throws the interception, he gets hurt. That was a dead under from that point. They grind out that victory. So now you see Xavier Worthy. You see now Pacheco come back into that offense. They do have the capability of putting up potentially 28, 30 points if they get going in this matchup. I just think when you look at it from the Chargers side as well, they're a confident group. Nobody thought, or at least I didn't, 8 wins at this point in the season, and they're not just a wild card contender. They're really potentially forming into one of the better defenses, I believe, in terms of the league. We'll see if they can do it in back-to-back games, but they have a dominant effort today. I like the way they're playing, and Justin Herbert at times has shown that he could go toe-to-toe with any quarterback when they open up the offense. I expect a big day as well. Josh Palmer, keep an eye out for him.
Yeah, we'll see. He's going to have to come up big unless you think Johnston is going to be there, and also Lab McConkey, that game-time decision. But also keep in mind for Kansas City, they have one of the better, Joe, guard-center combos in the league. Power football can run it. They are turnstiles at right and left tackle, which is going to be massive for the Chargers today. Like DJ Humphries comes over, Joe, off the scrap heap, and they say, hey, protect the backside for Patrick Mahomes. There could be some issues there. So as much as I say I would take Kansas City, let's just say minus 3.5 points, the way the Chargers win this football game is not on offense to me. It's on defense and pressuring Patrick Mahomes, where we're going to be sitting there mid-third quarter like, same Chargers game again, 10-9, 13-12, hang around. Now we need a field goal to win it, which again says, well, Donnie, why don't we just take the 3.5? I just look for the Chiefs to play better defense than the Chargers overall, enough for a 4-point victory today.
So that's the other side of this game is all of a sudden, the Chiefs don't have the best defense in football.
Yeah.
Because Buffalo put up 30 on them. Carolina looked good offensively throughout the game.
Yep.
And I know that we only saw 17 from Aiden O'Connell last week, but he threw for 340.
Where was that last year, right? Remember that?
So last year, they played on Christmas.
13
I had
point
his
dogs.
over completion.
I know you did.
Okay? I think he
had
completed
4.
8 passes on the opening drive. I think he maybe completed 1 or 2 the rest of the game. Christmas Day, walk in the Walsh household, mom goes, "What was that best bet?" That's what she said.
Wow.
I was like, "Did Donnie put you up to this?"
Man.
Honestly, that was fair.
Two presents were going back that night.
It does go to your point, though, usually, like, listen, maybe the best bet shouldn't be anything related to Aiden O'Connell. Like, give people the stars, and there'll be a little more leeway there. When it comes to, again, the way that this kind of will shift here, if Kansas City does lose this game, what kind of gap? Let's assume a Buffalo win. We're going to get that game. I'm not sure if you guys like Buffalo today, but just assume it. What kind of gap would you expect then in the conference pricing? Because Buffalo has already jumped Kansas City in the AFC. Now, marginally, 2-1 compared to 250, but that is without holding the 1 seed, Donnie. What type of gap could we see?
No, I don't want to say it should be marginal, but I think it's going to be more than marginal because then you believe to say, okay, the reason why we like Kansas City is, yes, they have Patrick Mahomes, we get that, but you have home field advantage in the playoffs when only one team gets a bye and you get it. What a massive advantage, and you probably skip right into the AFC Championship game. But if you look at the future scheduling here, if they do lose to the Chargers, that's an AFC loss. They go on the road to the Browns, should be okay. The Texans will still be fighting for seeding at that point. And then you see at the Steelers, and the Broncos would love to hit you in the last game of the season, which show they're going to be fighting for their playoff lives. So, yes, they lose today, and Buffalo wins, which I do think Buffalo wins. Big swing.
Yeah, I agree with you that if Buffalo wins, they would jump in a big way, extend, and they would be the significant favorite for the number 1 seed in the AFC and have the best odds. And let's not forget, if they do pick up the victory, right, they enter this game, Buffalo, on a 7-game win streak, right? They've won now by 13.5 points per game. They'd be right there with the Philadelphia Eagles in terms of win streaks, peaking at just the right time.
Mm-hmm. Certainly so. Let's get into that Buffalo game today because I know what I think of the spot. It's the number that's tripping me up. I'll explain as we're back next here on Pro Football Today.
She was recruited to Oregon partially by, guess who? Mark Campbell and Xavi Lopez. They know what they're doing. And I'm going to say this right now, folks. I'm going to say this right now. Mark Campbell is one of the 5 to 10 best coaches in women's college basketball right now.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
We got the NBA Cup going on. Not that anybody really cares per se about the NBA Cup. Now, I got to be honest with you. I actually did try to look of like, okay, like what does it mean like for the NBA Cup? Like who's playing for what here? And I lost interest and I gave up after about 30 seconds. And I was like, you know what? Whatever, dude. There's NBA games.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
He also said that the Bears head coaching opening would be the most coveted job after the season.
They'll let that guy stay. I heard today that they were very worried about screwing up Caleb Williams, so that he likes this guy Brown so much that they may let him stay as the head coach. What a disaster that'll turn into.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Back right here on Pro Football Today. We dive into this game between the Buffalo Bills and the Los Angeles Rams in what should be a really fun game. The LA Rams at 6-6 are not done when we're talking about the NFC West race. Realistically, neither are the Niners. We'll get to their game a little bit later on in the show. You have a 7-5 Seattle, 2 6-6 teams with the Rams and the Cardinals, and again, 5-7 right now for San Francisco. I said that I know what the spot tells me. To me, this is a Rams spot. At home, you try and step up. You know the division is right there for you. And if you're Buffalo, you've been rolling. It's been great. It's been good. They have a little bit of a history under McDermott. They're great off the bye, and then they forget what's going on the next week of football. You look at the game against Kansas City, and that takes a lot out of you, and the bye helps settle you down. But then you play in the snow, and you have all that fun. I'm being serious. That takes a lot out of you. It's a Rams spot. But the number, I don't think I'm getting enough. And it's funny, probably because people out there think like me, it's a Rams spot, but the Rams' home field advantage isn't that great. There's probably going to be more Bills fans than Rams fans. I know home field is more than fans. It's travel, it's comfort, it's familiarity. But if I was getting even 4.5, that might be enough to make the difference here, Lisi. But I do certainly lean towards the Rams.
I am with you. Now, you saw 4.5s all week. Till about Wednesday and Thursday, they started to hit down the number down to 3.5. And we talk about how dominant the Bills are, won 7 straight by 13.5 points per game. Allen, $148 and 2 touchdowns last week. James Cook, 104 yards on the ground. And to your point about, home field advantage, L.A. is only 3-3 at home straight up. The last 2 home games, they got blown out by the Eagles and Dolphins, respectively. So they should be getting more. That's why I actually like the Rams here, Kev. I think it's a bounce-back spot. We saw a very blue-collar, divisional game last week against New Orleans. They went toe-to-toe. For me, I just like Stafford in this spot. I do like the over 49.5. Puka Nacua had 56 yards. Cooper Kupp's been non-existent, but I do think he gets involved in the offense today. I'm going over Matt Stafford. I like the Rams. Don't count them out on the money line. I think they potentially could strike the upset, but I really like the over, Donnie, 49.5.
Yeah, all up to Matthew Stafford today. If he's on it like we know he can be with those 2 wide receivers, they can keep him in the game, but also understand what Kevin's talking about as well. High-energy game last week. Now, I know you played an opponent that you were probably supposed to beat, but in one of those circle-the-wagon games before the season started, wait to see this game comes up. That was a big game technically, and they won it easily. Now you go from Buffalo, freezing cold, out to a dome on the West Coast. Sometimes you don't play as well or up for that game. We're not saying the Buffalo Bills are heading into this game like, no big deal. No, they understand the stakes, but also keep in mind, like if Kansas City was playing at 1 o'clock where they're playing at 4 o'clock, you watch that football game. Ooh, Kansas City lost. Now we're revved up. Ooh, Kansas City won. Now we absolutely have to win. Kansas City doesn't play till night, so you don't get that extra incentive here. So Buffalo playing on that island, and Kevin also is right here. 75% of the tickets coming in on the road team, the Buffalo Bills. Opening number, 3.5. Joe pointed out, up to 4.5 this weekend. You know where it sits right now? 3.5. Unlimited money, unlimited tickets on one side. That line is not moving. So, yes, we think it should be higher, 4.5. But there's a reason why that line isn't moving off the 3.5 here. It's not a trap game, don't get me wrong. But if you're just reading the line, that's a Rams number.
Yeah, again, I fully agree here. But, with Buffalo now, why it is difficult to get in front of them is, as much as maybe the Rams, and I think we've laid out why, but it's a bit of a vibe thing, right? Like, my vibe on the game is that this is an under. Because if I think the Rams, I actually don't think the Rams win this game 35-31. Oh my goodness. Like, they're going to need Josh to stumble. They are. The Rams' offense has struggled in these step-up spots in this very building against Philadelphia,
Eagles.
Against Miami as well, though, Donnie. When we were here on that Monday night, they didn't score a touchdown.
Prime time.
They kicked 5 field goals. You are now seeing, Lisi, 6 straight games. Buffalo has scored 30-plus. Do you think the Rams can slow down Josh Allen, the MVP favorite?
I think they can. Now, you look at the game last week against New Orleans and Derek Carr. They held that offense, and I understand it's the Saints, to 5 of 15 on third down conversions. Third down is key for the L.A. Rams here. They couldn't get off the field against the Eagles on that Sunday night. They're going to have to do it against Josh Allen and win the turnover battle. Simple, right? Let's see if they could do it. I still believe in their defense. It's a bend but don't break type of unit. They're young. They're coming into form. But again, it really does, in my opinion, as much as it relies on their defense, I do believe that it's Stafford, and I do believe it's Kyren Williams with the offense. When Kyren Williams is involved with the rushing attack and he's catching footballs out of the backfield, they are a dynamic duo, right? And if Cooper Kupp could step up to give you at least 50, 60 yards to take the pressure off of Stafford where he doesn't have to solely look for Puka in terms of this matchup, I think they're going to be in it. Again, especially if they score first. You're always playing at home. You want to score first. They haven't done that in terms of those games that they lost against the Dolphins and Eagles. They were trailing in the second half of those games. You want to build a first-half lead and then put the pressure on Josh Allen to see if he does implode in terms of this type of situation.
Yeah, look at Josh Allen, 242.5 roughly. That's what his passing prop is. You say, okay, he probably could get that, and you see the touchdowns up there, 26-5. He's been nothing short of phenomenal, 334 rushing yards. He's always the key contributor. But for my money, as Joe's pointing out, you have legitimate wide receivers that can do some damage against that secondary for the Buffalo Bills. So I say to myself, Matthew Stafford, 251.5. If he throws for 220, I don't think they get the job done. Yeah. So Matthew Stafford, to me, is going to be the key to this game. Sometimes, Kyren Williams has to have a balanced attack. I understand that. But you want to beat really good football teams, your all-pro quarterback has to step up with those two wide receivers. So I don't think there's any way that the Rams come in without Stafford going over 250 yards. That's the way I'd look at that for this game.
I think that's interesting, Donnie, because I guess what my pushback would be is I watched them against Philadelphia run the football, we're in it, and then all of a sudden, snap, bing, bang, boom. Is Kyren Williams still even on this team? And listen, Buffalo is a different animal, but in a way like DRS, if you tell me, I'll go the other way with what we. Okay. Hey, Stafford threw for 275.
Yes.
Oh, so they were trailing all game.
But see
what I'm saying?
Yes, no. That's my betting angle is regardless of the situation, he's going to have to throw for 250.
I think that I can get there. More so if you told, hey, he threw for 190.
Either they got blown out or won the football game.
Yeah, interesting.
No, you're right.
It was a bang under.
Yeah.
He throws for He throws for 312. Things got ugly.
Yeah. No, I mean, if it plays out like last week with New Orleans where it was a dead under game, that total was 48.5, 49, and it was 21-14 with respect to the matchup, and Kyren did have 100 yards on the ground. So you want to sustain drives to keep Josh Allen on the sidelines, right? Keon Coleman's going to be a game-time decision. We'll see if he plays today in terms of that offense, but it's all James Cook and Allen so far. They're the most consistent players, and Dawson Knox that stepped up for Kincaid.
Let me tell you what we don't talk enough about. How banged up the Buffalo pass catching room is.
Yeah.
Again, they score 30 every game, and Josh is the MVP favorite. Keon Coleman hasn't played since the breakout game. Is that right?
Yeah, it's still in practice because I was trying to check. Is he playing this week or no?
I heard he's a game-time decision.
Gotcha.
But we haven't seen Keon play in weeks. Dawson Knox is supposed to be their number one guy. Haven't seen him play in weeks. Amari Cooper's been coming on slowly but surely. His best play was a lateral. All right? Josh Allen, let me make this very clear. I've gotten into debates with our crew about whether he will win the award because of how the award works, okay? That's different from what I think should happen. I have been very wrong about Buffalo this year because I thought they were asking Josh Allen to do too much.
Right.
And they are not who they are because they have they're not the Chiefs. I'll be on They're not getting lucky and then Josh makes a play. They score 30 every single game.
Yep.
I cannot give Josh Allen enough credit. I think it is, without a close second, the best season of his career.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you saw it, 25-6 in terms of the touchdown to interception ratio. Sometimes you don't need the A-list talent. Sometimes you just have chemistry as an offense and defensive unit, and that's what you're seeing in the Buffalo Bills right now. Now, can they carry that through in terms of a playoff environment like we saw Kansas City? Time will tell, but right now they're hitting on all cylinders.
They certainly are there.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to run up against the break because up next, we take the Rams portion of it and tie it to Seattle versus Arizona. This division is completely up for grabs. Big wins on the board today for one of those two teams. We'll talk about it.
She was recruited to Oregon, partially by, guess who? Mark Campbell and Xavi Lopez. They know what they're doing. And I'm going to say this right now, folks. I'm going to say this right now. Mark Campbell is one of the 5 to 10 best coaches in women's college basketball right now.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
We got the NBA Cup going on. Not that anybody really cares per se about the NBA Cup. Now, I got to be honest with you. I actually did try to look of like, okay, like what does it mean like for the NBA Cup? Like who's playing for what here? And I lost interest and I gave up after about 30 seconds. And I was like, you know what? Whatever, dude. There's NBA games.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
He also said that the Bears head coaching opening would be the most coveted job after the season.
They'll let that guy stay. I heard today that they were very worried about screwing up Caleb Williams, so that he likes this guy Brown so much that they may let him stay as the head coach. What a disaster that'll turn into.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Back right here on Pro Football Today for, if we put it in the slot, would have been the worst game of the week we've had all season between Arizona and Seattle. We moved some things around. I do think it's the most important game on the slate. It's kind of yesterday's SMU Clemson, right, where people are probably more interested in Georgia, Texas, or Oregon, Penn State. But this is a game that is going to shift a lot in the market, because when you look at the odds to win the NFC West right now, and rightfully, the books are kind of just trying to mirror the standings. When you get this deep into the season and this much is on the line, there's not much else you can do. So it shades Seattle because they're in first, but Arizona's not far behind, especially because they're home favorites today. The Rams are there. They're knocking on the door. They could kind of, creep up, but they need to pull off the slight upset today. The Niners are well back because they're 2 back of Seattle, but you could get to a situation again today where, boom, all right, we got 6 wins here. Like, it's all right there, Lisi. So when you break down Arizona, Seattle today, what do you like?
Well, it's interesting because Seattle has won 3 straight heading into this game. They've won those games by an average margin of 6 points per game, and they defeated Arizona a couple weeks ago in their building 16-6, completely handcuffed. Kyler Murray held that team to field goals instead of touchdowns, limited James Conner. I think he only had 8 yards rushing in terms of that matchup. Yeah. If they bring that type of effort, they're going to win it. Now, Arizona has lost 2 straight, but they're 4-2 at home. I like what I saw in regards to the first half of that matchup against a very good Minnesota defense. Kyler throws for 246. I think this is a big game for Kyler. As much as I think that Seattle, is the better team heading into this matchup because they're more consistent, I'll bounce back with Arizona outright today, and I think the game is a dead over. Completely different from what we saw 2 weeks ago in Seattle. I think they'll push tempo. I think Kyler will eat. How about Trey McBride, too? 12 receptions, 96 yards. We talk about Bowers. We don't talk about McBride enough. I think it's a breakout performance for Arizona. Give me Arizona in the over today.
Yeah, if McBride was on one of those power teams that we always watch on TV, let's just say it was a Dallas Cowboy, I mean, one of the biggest superstars in the NFL, still seemingly unknowing, even though he gets 12 to 13 targets a week and usually dominates. But this seems to be, like, Joe, a springboard game for me if you're the Arizona Cardinals. You take a look at 2 weeks ago, they go to Seattle. It's hard to win on the road. It's hard to win on Seattle. I get it. They did play decent football. That one little fluky pick six, throw it up, which went back the other way, which doomed them in. But make no mistakes about it. The Vikings are one of the better football teams in the NFL. They had them dead to rights and let that one get away. So it's one of those where if you're Jonathan Gannon, let me sort of circle the wagons. 2 straight losses, should have won last week, didn't win. We have to win this week here, and I think they get the job done. But the reason I say it's a springboard game, look at the next couple games after this. Patriots and Panthers before you take on the Rams and the 49ers to end the season. You need a 3-0 Jet here, and I think they get the job done as well. For me, Kevin, I'm going to go ahead and say, you know what? Arizona's my play today in Seattle.
This game, it's a game that, especially when I was betting a lot more sides early in the year, I had a few of these where you show me the line on Monday, and I go, boom, Arizona, no doubt in my mind. By the time we get to this, that's going to Sunday, I've completely flipped my brain around, and it's like, nah, Arizona's obvious. Seattle, the defense is playing really well, which it is.
Right.
They're off a bye. The defense is playing very well. Arizona's not playing well all of a sudden.
Right.
I don't think Kyler's been super trustworthy. I'm on him actually to throw an interception in this game at a plus price. We've seen Seattle pick off 6 consecutive opposing quarterbacks. I think it's a nice number. But it's why I step back. I actually weirdly lean Seahawks now. But this is one of those games, that, and I think every bettor has these. When the game's over, you go, I knew it. It's like, what do you mean? It's like someone in the room should be there. You didn't know anything. You like both teams. You like the over. You like the under.
I would have won. Regardless of the outcome, I would have won.
You would be that guy. You didn't know anything.
Well, yeah, but I need someone to say it to me, right?
Yeah.
Like, listen, I'll tell the both of you. But, I'm just, but no, seriously.
Should have made that my best bet.
I was all over Arizona on Monday. By Tuesday, Seattle, I almost had an NFC future on the team. Like, that is, to me, how I'm starting to feel when it comes to this football game. And I think part of the reason is if you kind of strip everything down of how they're playing coming in or where the game is, I think there are a lot of similarities between these teams where, all right, the defenses are playing a little bit better. There's a few key skill guys that you like. Metcalf, you mentioned McBride, right? I think in Smith and Jigba's really, really come on. We know James Conner usually reliable. And then 2 quarterbacks where on any given day, you're like, man, do they got a dude. Because Kyler's great games are unreal. And I know, Lisa, you've never been big on Geno.
Right.
But there are games where you look at Geno, you're like, yeah, this is going to be their quarterback for the next half decade.
Yes.
And that's where, and we're going to get into this in a little bit more, but we talk about the NFC outright market. If you could find conviction on who you believe is going to win the NFC West, I think that is the best bet you can make in the NFC outright market.
It's a great look, and that's why when we do look at just the NFC West, I only look to the top 3 teams. I'm completely writing off San Francisco at 14-1. So for me, though, it isn't Seattle. It is Arizona and the LA Rams. I do believe in both of those teams more than I believe in the Seattle Seahawks. We saw this, and think about this, right? Seattle has won 3 straight. When Arizona went into Seattle, they had won 4 straight. They potentially were playing their best football up until that point, went on the road and got handcuffed, right? And think about how Seattle responded. So I understand the assessment. They fall behind, 14-0, 21-7. They fight, and they win that game against Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets. Still a difficult game when you're down by double digits, right? They grind, they shut down that offense, and they win it by 5 points. So they're playing with confidence right now. The biggest thing for me is that I just believe in Gannon. That defense, prior to that Seattle game was playing lights out, and they held Seattle to only 16 points. They're 4-2 at home. I just think we'll get a bounce-back spot playing at home. And again, I do feel that they push tempo. That's why I love the over today.
And by the way, on the opposite side here, as I just told that breakdown of the Arizona thing, like now's the time to get going for Seattle. You got at the Cardinals today, then the Packers and the Vikings back-to-back, but you got them at home. But still, that's a little gauntlet to run through right now, which is why I look towards Arizona out in the West and say, you know what? They just might be that team. And today, a massive game if they can pick up that W.
So that's where, though, that the schedule strength, Donnie, not that it's all the way burnt, but you lose today, you're way back now because you've been swept by Seattle.
Right.
So that's now, you'd have 7 losses to their 5. Add on the head-to-head. You must have a better record than that team. Is that how that works?
What?
Actually, so now
you have to have a better record than if you're tied or.
But does it just go to division record, or would your head-to-head come down first?
The total record is first.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I imagine their total record would be worse if they did drop 2 straight, but you kind of get the point. Let's go to that NFC outright market and how things look after a huge, huge game on Thursday night.
she was recruited to Oregon partially by, guess who? Mark Campbell and Xavi Lopez. They know what they're doing. And I'm going to say this right now, folks. I'm going to say this right now. Mark Campbell is one of the 5 to 10 best coaches in women's college basketball right now.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
We got the NBA Cup going on. Not that anybody really cares per se about the NBA Cup. Now, I got to be honest with you. I actually did try to look of like, okay, like what does it mean like for the NBA Cup? Like who's playing for what here? And I lost interest and I gave up after about 30 seconds. And I was like, you know what? Whatever, dude. There's NBA games.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
He also said that the Bears head coaching opening would be the most coveted job after the season.
They'll let that guy stay. I heard today that they were very worried about screwing up Caleb Williams, so that he likes this guy Brown so much that they may let him stay as the head coach. What a disaster that'll turn into.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
All right, we're back with you right here. This is our market movement segment, and we're going to talk some NFC outright. But we are on this desk going to give you the updated college football playoff rankings. And with that, we do have updated college football odds. SMU to make, Alabama to miss. A number that was initially overnight popped by books at around Bama 6-1 to make the playoff. Click, 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 click. All of a sudden, it was under 3-1 by the time most of us went to sleep. We sit here now, Donnie, plus 560 Bama, minus 1,000 SMU. And as we were saying last year on the desk, we saw the odds move way in favor of Bama as we got closer, and Bama got in. Yep. Looks like somebody knows something.
Yeah, and it's probably right because you would have those twisting and turning here. Somebody's getting a phone call, somebody's leaking information. But also understand, you're probably still always going to be leaning with SMU in a close loss going up against Alabama. But I'm just intrigued to see where these numbers go. But minus 1,000, as we talk about the handicapping perspective, it looks like SMU is going to get in the college football playoff.
And we talk about margin of defeat, 34-31 in overtime, last-second kick. That holds into the equation. They lost 2 games by a total of 6 points, one to BYU, 18-15 when BYU ran and was 9-0, 10-0 during the regular season. That loss doesn't look that bad, right? And their starting quarterback Keith Jennings wasn't even the starter in that first loss. So I think SMU is deserved. I know resume-wise you can argue, but they're deserving with having 2 losses.
I want to throw out something else that's very interesting. An aggressive move, quite frankly,
college
FanDuel Sportsbook. Yes.
Right, what do you got?
They're hanging the Ohio State-Tennessee game. 7.5 Ohio State favored at home, total 47.5. The idea with them doing that is Ohio State will stay at 8, and the Vols are at 9. Now, the Vols are going to be at 9. You really can't find any projections that would suggest they won't be 9th within this poll. But Ohio State has kind of been a tricky projection. I think they will be 8 personally. I did my own kind of projected field. But there is a world where the committee goes, well, you have the same exact record as Penn State. You beat Penn State, and they drop the Nittany Lions then all of a sudden to 8. Clearly, that's not what they're projecting. The other thing that they are booking very confidently is Texas to be the 5th seed, minus 1,600. That goes against what I think is going to happen. I actually think it's going to be Notre Dame. I look at the way the field was set prior, and I believe, Lisi, that the one-loss Irish will be in front of both the two-loss teams that lost in yesterday's games when you look at Texas and Penn State.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. You have a team that had won 9 straight, Kev, by an average margin of victory of 33-plus points per game. They have dominated on both sides of the ball. Now, they do have that one MAC loss to Northern Illinois as a 28.5-point favorite. But if we're talking, just Ohio State, Notre Dame, Texas right now got blown out at home in the first matchup by Georgia by 15 points, and they were favored in that game by 3.5. They were favored in the SEC championship game and lost to a backup quarterback. So why not put the Irish in terms of 5 overall? They're deserving of it. But again, it comes down to, SEC ties, and knowing that the SEC runs and the SEC bias and the fact that, Notre Dame's still right now an independent. And even though they have an ACC schedule, they get, these teams get bashed, and that's the one. There's no consistency when they break these things down.
No, there's not. I have liked Notre Dame since that loss to Northern Illinois, which is a terrible loss, which we all thought was like that one loss equals 3 losses. Yeah. There's no way they can make it in. Only to figure we'd have a lot of turmoil coming down the stretch where now the committee is actually looking at losses. Not so bad, depending on who you play. And then, granted, we're going to get some changes in the upcoming future years. But looking at Notre Dame playing as good as anybody, and even if the competition isn't that great, you look at a lot of these team schedules and say, we have no idea how they wound up. Correct me if I'm wrong, like in the ACC. How did Clemson, SMU, and Miami not even play each other as the top 3 teams in the conference? Nothing makes sense anymore now that you have these weird, janky schedules.
I will just throw this out there, and I took a little bit of Notre Dame to be the 5th seed. But if we
what
had
was that price?
12 to 1.
Okay.
It's 11 to 1 now.
Right.
If we had the old format, I just want people to understand this. We would have entered yesterday, right? 14 playoff, Oregon, Texas, Penn State, Notre Dame. That would have been your 1 through 4 with Georgia at 5. So it would have been those would have been the only 5 teams that would have been in the mix, right? Nobody out there actually thinks for a single second that both Texas and Penn State would have lost, and the committee would have went, yeah, Notre Dame's the one out. That is not what would have happened. That is what the committee would be saying if they put Notre Dame down to the 7th seed. I'm projecting and betting against that happening. We will follow it. The NFC outright market in the Philadelphia Eagles game next.
She was recruited to Oregon partially by, guess who? Mark Campbell and Xavi Lopez. They know what they're doing. And I'm going to say this right now, folks. I'm going to say this right now. Mark Campbell's one of the 5 to 10 best coaches in women's college basketball right now.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
We got the NBA Cup going on. Not that anybody really cares per se about the NBA Cup. Now, I got to be honest with you. I actually did try to look of what does it mean like for the NBA Cup? Like who's playing for what here? And I lost interest and I gave up after about 30 seconds. And I was like, you know what? Whatever, dude. There's NBA games.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
He also said that the Bears head coaching opening would be the most coveted job after the season.
They'll let that guy stay. I heard today that they were very worried about screwing up Caleb Williams, so that he likes this guy Brown so much that they may let him stay as the head coach. What a disaster that'll turn into.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.